Hi! Today I'm going to look at this hot mess of a deck that has a bunch of things that haven't been planted yet. Let me see if I can pan around. You can see all the stuff that I have to plant. I'm going to find a place to plant it today, somewhere way out there in the yard. That's what's on hand for today, so stay tuned. I'm not sure if I will get to all this today, but just an overview of what I have to plant. I have sunflowers, various heights. Some are going to go to hopefully 12 feet and some are going to be more 5-6 range. I have zinnias, I have marigolds, I have some baby basils back there. I have some coleus, you can see them popping up, little babies. And I have other things, milkweed. I can't see what's on what's labeled and everything. I have sunflowers that have kind of flopped here. And I have a dusty miller, more sunflowers, more things that I have to read the jugs, coreopsis and echinacea, tomato plants that definitely need planted. And I think that's it. And this is a nicotiana, however you pronounce that. So I'm going to figure out what I can plant right away. The tomatoes would make food to eat. They'd like to be in the ground, but they're growing quite nicely in these little containers. And to review, I won't go into the details of how I make these things today, but I have soil blocks that I made over the winter, which have worked out really well for planting anything in them. But I'm going to switch to, I was using tin cans to press out my blocks this year. So for next year, I'm going to use a mechanized process that will make that better. You never want to have soil blocks touching just while I'm looking at them because the roots will jump across. So that was kind of a lesson learned on that. Then I've used fertile pots, which is these round pots, and I've used cow pots, which is the square pots. And those both fully biodegrade. More about that in a future video. I just wanted you to see what I have to work with at this point in time. Because tomato plants produce tomatoes, and I would like to have some before October, I need to get those planted first today. So this is the section that I'm going to use to plant my grouping of 4, my companion buddies, tomatoes, marigold, which a lot of you probably already know about, and basil and zinnia, those 4 together. And I'm going to put them in this bed. It's plenty of sunshine all day long. This is a good spot for them. And I'm not doing raised beds at this point. I'm not sure where everything's going to end up in all my beds because these beds have been recently converted from containing a whole bunch of very tall ornamental grasses for like 25 years. So it's a work in progress. So I'm not going to raise the bed. I'm going to amend the soil and put everything right here. Before I do the next planting, a quick review of the kind of planting arrangement I'll be doing. So what we have here is some zinnias that I've staked up because they didn't have enough light when I was starting them out this year and they became a little leggy, so I'm giving them extra support till they get past this phase. So along the back row will be zinnias, and then I planted my tomatoes. I can't show you this yet, but they're planted kind of sideways. I'll get to that in a little bit. Then I have in front of the tomato plant, I have marigolds, they're doing pretty well. And then I have basil, and I'll remove these plastic jugs. These jugs were part of my winter gardening. They are the top half or the bottom half. Now the bottom half of the jug that I use for my winter gardening, I repurposed them when I first planted these basil to give them extra protection against gnawing creatures like rabbits. And then I've had a squirrel looking for one of the 3 gazillion nuts that he or she may have planted, so I'll come back shortly and patch this hole up and move the straw back where it's supposed to be. So on down the line, I continue the pattern of zinnia in back, basil, marigold in front, And I have 3 different varieties of tomatoes. I have Whopper and Sun Gold and Sweet Million. The Sun Gold and Sweet Million are cherry tomatoes, very high on the sweetness scale, and the Whopper is just a regular, not gigantic, just a kind of a slicer tomato. And all those seeds come from Park. So what I have planted here is real similar to what I'm going to do in the bed that I'm working on shortly. I have prepared this first bed for planting, gathered up all my material that I'm going to put in the bag. So a tip for you who use these lawn and leaf bags, they make devices or stands that hold these bags up. But in case you didn't know, you can roll the top of the bag down and it turns in from a bag that will fall over all the time to a bag that stands up all by itself. So if you didn't know that, it's a good tip, something you can use in your gardening efforts. I have all my ingredients assembled. I have my lovely water jug full of water. I have, when I get to tomatoes, I have my straw. I've got my lovely prepared soil. I have the granular food that I use when I plant things like this. Sprinkle that around. And I have, when I get to the tomatoes, I have my little tomato fertilizer spikes, which I'm trying for the first time this year. I have a bucket for the soil that's coming out of the ground that I'll process later. And over here, I have my Zinnia. I made a tag up. I don't make a tag for everything I plant, but I made one for this. This is planted in what's called a fertile pot, which fully biodegrades. You can look it up. And the seeds are growing through the roots are growing through the side, no problem. And this is one of those zinnias that I didn't have enough light for. I've staked it up to give it support, and hopefully as it gets taller it'll become stronger and support itself. So next up is to get this zinnia in the ground. I will tell you the zinnia is going to go right about there, down there. I have cannas planted behind that, and then in this mulched area I'm going to pull the mulch back and plant some gigantic sunflowers that will go to be hopefully 10 to 12 feet tall. So 10 to 12 feet tall in the cannas, 5-6 feet in front of that zinnia, hopefully 3 to 4 feet. So time to plant the zinnia. Digging my hole for my zinnia, and I'm going to make this hole over twice the size of the zinnia in the fertile pot. So I'm going to backfill with lovely soil that I make. Now I don't make it, I blend it with a bunch of other good stuff. It's in another video. So now this bed that I'm working in over the years has had a bunch of leaves tilled into it, and other soil added to it. So it's mostly clay, but it's been somewhat amended. So the hole is dug. Need to go a little bit deeper, I think. Once I get that done, it'll be time to put the zinnia in and backfill with the good stuff. Let's check this out. I want to get the hole deeper than it needs to be, and it is. So what I'm going to do is add my lovely blend to the bottom of the hole. Put a little bit more in. That's good. Let's see if it raises the level up to where I want it. That's pretty good. And I'm going to bring it up a little bit more. I don't want to create a bucket for rainwater to collect in. So there you go. Got that. And zinnia is there. Now I'll go through the process of filling in all the soil all the way around the zinnia and bring it up to the top level. With my lovely blend that I backfill with, I flatten the top. So when I put my granular fertilizer on here, there's my granular fertilizer, put that on here, sprinkle it lightly around here. There, got that sprinkled there. So what I'll do now is put another layer of soil just to kind of hold the fertilizer in place. Sprinkle it all the way around. The fertilizer is held in place. That was supposed to be the soil. Ha ha ha. Okay, soil. There you go. Now that I have that in place, I'm going to water it in a little bit. I want to get the fertilizer kind of locked in. So here we go. Let's get a little bit from this side over here. Okay, that's good. Next one I'm going to do is, since I'm at the top, I'm at the soil level, the ground level. I'm going to take some of the soil I just dug out of the ground, break it up a little bit, and finish the top of the hole with my regular clunky garden soil. So everything else below that is good stuff. I have now added my dug out of the ground soil. I broke it up a little bit, added it to my lovely soil blend with my fertilizer, and the zinnia is completely planted. In the case of this particular plant, I know it's a zinnia, but what I typically do for things to keep track of them, I use a grease pencil, write down what it is or abbreviate the date I planted it. I don't do this for everything I plant, but I do it for some things that I want to keep track of. I put it in the ground. Well, this particular tag is textured on one side, the side I'm writing on, the other side smooth. I'm putting it in the ground face down so the sun won't hit it and weather won't hit it, just kind of protect it. If I need to check it, I can check that anytime I want. I'm going to plant the tomato plant next. And I'm going to snag this. You can read it's a Sweet Million. And I started this in a jug, the winter gardening thing. The leaves are curled a little bit. These soil blocks are a little bit dried out, so I need to add some water to all the soil blocks. We've had so much rain the past couple of days, and I kind of let it dry out a little bit, which it now has done. So I need to be adding some water to this shortly. But for now, I'm going to take one of these Sweet Million cherry tomato plants out, and this is what's going to be planted into the next spot. Since my cherry tomato plant was in a state of wanting some water, I'm going to let them sit in the bottom of this jug, and these soil blocks, they wick that water up pretty fast, so I'll get this thing hydrating again as I'm preparing the hole for planting. I now have this tomato plant lying in the soil, in the hole, excuse me, on top of some of the good soil that I have prepared. So what I'm doing is I'm planting this tomato sideways. I will prune all the branches that would be underground. I'm going to prune all those off of the plant. I won't make you watch that. And in case you didn't know this, all that stem will form a root system. Because this plant is so big already and should have been planted a long time ago, it already has this. It was kind of flopping over and growing sideways. So because it's already growing in an upward manner, I don't have to use, I don't have to use my encourager rock, as I call it, to encourage a newly planted tomato plant to turn up. They'll turn up on their own because they're looking for light. In fact, you can lay these plants down sideways the day before you plant them in this sideways manner, and when you come out the next day, it will already be turning up naturally. So I will continue, prune off the branches, and we'll take the next step. Here's what the tomato plant looks like with all the lower leaves pruned off. That will all be underground. And I did go ahead and use my encourager rock just to give it something to rest on and further encourage. So this is all going to turn facing up. Then as the tomato plant grows stronger, I will prune off that one branch that's kind of clutching the ground. But I will come back with straw in a minute and get all this finished up. I switched up on my lovely soil blend. I've forgotten that I had made up some special soil just for planting my tomatoes, because my compost cow manure amendment is something called black cow, which costs a little bit more but is the best stuff that I've been able to find. So you can notice the color is different. Well, they're blends, so I guess that's not fair, but I'll finish this up with black cow, and then I will put in my tomato spikes. I'm using a couple of these fertilizer spikes the first time this year. I'm going to plug one in about down where the soil block is, and put one up here along where the stem's going to form a new root system. So I've got some on either side of the tomato plant. I did use some of my regular garden soil that wasn't in too bad a shape just to make a layer on top of my great soil. And now I'm going to water this in, give it a good soaking. I'm being careful not to get water on the tomato leaves. That being said, I did get some on the leaves, so I'll knock it off before it gets too dark tonight. That'll all dry up and be okay. Something I would like to add is, as you're digging your planting holes for whatever you're planting, you can use your spade or shovel or whatever to score the outside edge of the hole all the way around. And then once you've scored the outside edges, what's inside the soil just pops right out, whatever shape you have scored. So right now I'm preparing the holes. The one on the left is going to hold the marigold because I have more of those, and the one on the right will hold the basil because I have fewer of those. I now have my marigold set into the soil. I skipped some steps because this is exactly the same as it was with the zinnia. There's my basil on the right. So the marigold is planted in a cow pot. No, that's backwards. The basil is planted in the cow pot. That's it, the cow pot. And the marigold is planted in the fertile pot. Both of these types of pots biodegrade real well. In fact, they say with the cow pots, their life is about 12 weeks. In fact, the pots that I don't use or that were failures, I'll tear that up into small pieces and mix it into my future amendment because it will break down and go away. So I'm not going to throw those away at all. So back to these guys. I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to put some of my lovely blend, soil blend, in the inside of this container and bring it up a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing over here with my basil. Just a little bit. I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I didn't have a problem with that in my first plantings. I don't think it'll be a problem here because I don't want to cut off the top. I could have cut off the top and made it flush with the soil level, but I'm going to add some extra soil here. Notice that I also flattened the area around where I put in my good soil so that my fertilizer won't roll away. Next, I'll top dress this with some more of the good soil and then some of my stuff out of the ground, and those should be good to go. So there you have it. This tomato companion group has been planted together. I'm going to add some more straw mulch to the rest of the plant, and I watered everything in. You probably can tell I've added some water. Put some of that crummy soil on top of each of these plants, and I'm going to do one more thing, so hang on, I'll show you. Over the past 25 or 30 years, I've accumulated a collection of these, we used to call them milk crates, and I don't know where they came from. I know I didn't steal them, but because of that stinking turd rabbit, I don't know if it likes anything. Probably not the marigold. But the basil looks so small, it's just a tiny little baby. So I'm going to put a milk crate on top of the basil for tonight anyway, and maybe I'll make one of those milk jug things that I made for the other basils and put them on top of this guy. This is out in an area where the rabbit visits on a regular basis, and I don't want the rabbit even to sample it, because even just taking a sample of that little basil, excuse me, the sample of the basil will pretty much wipe it out. And that about wraps up planting my tomato companion group. Everything's in the ground, good to go. I have a little finish up stuff to do, but otherwise we're all set. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Remember that this is all an experiment. There's nothing you can do except kill plants, but let's not do that. But don't be afraid to experiment and try new things. It's part of what life is. See you soon.